This is the True Leader Podcast. Today, our special guest is Ovell Barbee, Human Resource Strategist, and we talk about lessons and experiences in his new book, The Big House. Don't miss it.
Welcome to the True Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christofferson.
And I'm Michelle Trosett.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started. Hey, welcome to the True Leader Podcast. It's Michelle.
And Tracy, back for another glorious day.
Back for another glorious day in the studio, interviewing another glorious person. How's that?
Don't you love our life?
I do.
I mean, really. Like, we get to meet the most amazing people. We get to be together. We have this amazing place we do our work in. Like, geez.
I know. Pinch me.
I know.
No, don't.
Yeah.
And I think what's really great, and today's an example with our interview, is how someone we interview and get to know says, oh, you need to meet this person. Then we meet that person. And then each of these relationships continues to grow. It's just like a web of
awesomeness.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly.
And we're at the center.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It is. It's really, we're, 6 degrees of separation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All these amazing people.
Exactly.
So very cool.
So today we interviewed Ovell Barbee, and he happens to live in the same area we do, but his work is all over the country, just like ours. Mm-hmm. And he was introduced from a mutual friend. We met him for a cup of coffee. We've stayed in touch, and he just wrote a book, which we're going to talk about on today's podcast, and today it happened.
Yeah. Such a lovely person.
He really is.
Just really, really enjoyed talking with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very wise and grounded and just, really
ready.
Really.
He's really ready to do good work in the world. I mean, not that he hasn't already, Ovell. It's not like you haven't already.
Yeah. Well, he's been doing a ton of good work, and he's got more in him, I can tell.
Yes.
So, yeah. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Ovell. Ovell Barbee is the owner and principal of Ovell Barbee Associates. Is also a renowned visionary human resources leader, consultant, and speaker with a passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's held executive leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies. And as a respected human resource and DEI thought leader, Ovell is an accomplished and sought-after speaker who chaired the National HR Healthcare Conference in 2022. He offers guidance and advice on HR and DEI topics through his website, askovell.com. And he has received a number of awards. Mm-hmm. So Ovell has been honored as a top 100 Chief Diversity Officer by the National Diversity Council, as a top 50 under 50 executive by the National Black MBA Association, and as a top 100 human resources professional by ONCON. He was the 2020 recipient of the City of Grand Rapids Walter Coe Public Service Grant Award, or Giant Award, as well.
Wow.
And he shares his life story and lessons learned in a book titled The Big House, A Human-Centered and Progressive Approach to DEI and Positive Workplace Engagement. So without further ado, here's our incredible interview with Ovell.
Well, hey there, Ovell. Welcome to the True Leader Podcast. We're so excited you're our guest today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here to join you guys.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, first things first, Ovell. We'd like you to tell our leaders why you wrote your book, The Big House.
Now, I'm excited to talk about the big house, and of course, I have one handy.
Oh, of course.
The book. But I decided to write the book because as my career progressed, I would have a number of people, not just diverse people, asking me, how did I do it? In terms of me being very relatable to people's stories, in terms of my early childhood experiences, and me feeling like I stayed true to the core. And over time, I said, my gosh, if this is helpful to other people, in that if it gives them a ray of hope, if I could do it, they can do it also. That's the order. I decided to write about the key learnings that helped me grow my career and couple them with recommendations for organizations to do better in the space of human resources and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I really enjoyed the way you wrote your book. And it was a both and. It was your story and it was strategies and recommendations for organizations. So it made it a really easy read. And so I just wanted to give you a shout out for that right away.
Oh, yeah, I accept all shout outs.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable, very easy to read and very enjoyable. Yeah. And in the book, you talk about a lot of the challenges that you have faced. And personally in HR, in organizations, in the corporate world. But what's like one of the most significant challenges that you have faced as a leader in DEI spaces?
I gave you the answer intentionally. The challenge is silence. As you guys were looking like, Ovell, I think we lost them. The Wi-Fi must be bad. That is the easiest question for me to answer. It is really silence. It's just interesting that as you start having those necessary conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion and the need to do better, a lot of times the room can go to complete silence. And I love doing that because what happens is you always have the rescuer like, oh my God, I think we lost Ovell, or his PowerPoint isn't working, as I sit there and just look stoically. Because without the conversations, we're not going to make any progress at all. You have every side of viewpoints and opinions. People saying, why do we always have to teach? Others saying, I don't want to listen. And so how do you meet in the middle and begin the steps necessary to make progress? So that is the most significant challenge I have faced is silence.
Yeah. And what do you do sometimes to break that silence?
That's a great question. I like the unrehearsed nature of the unanticipated question, especially when you feel like you have a good answer. So the mantra, a couple of mantras are associated with me. One is stop the silence. And the second is use your voice. And I have experienced throughout the years people contacting me as an HR professional and leader wanting to meet with me. And most of the time, I don't have a clue what the meeting subject is going to be about. I make myself available and always have. And a lot of times people express a range of emotion in gearing up for those discussions with me. It could be anger, sadness, etc. And I'm hanging on their every word, listening to them tell me about something that happened at work. And at the end, I typically stutter through my question to them, which is, did you say anything? And a lot of times people say no because of the sense of security with the job, describing horrendous events that have occurred in the workplace. And I developed the counter to stop the silence, which is hashtag use your voice. You know, you should have said something. It was like a missed opportunity for the
Mhm.
individual. And this card I always carry it with me. It says hashtag use your voice. And under the hashtag, it says, I will use my voice to, and then you fill in the blank.
Mm,
And in
mm-hmm.
terms of like giving people encouragement to speak up when they feel like they have experienced something personally or on behalf of someone else, it's very important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, we in our work with polarity intelligence, the missing logic in leadership, one of the components is meaningful dialogue. And there's one of the first principles is to create intention and psychological safety. And we have a principle on silence and a principle on listening and advocacy. And so there's a lot of connections. Like people have to feel
Mhm.
safe to speak up and share their thinking behind their thinking. Otherwise, none of us will know, and we'll never reach that mutual understanding. Um, and so there's a lot of connections to creating that safe place.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the things that came up for me is, sometimes when I've been in situations where there's like radio silence, it's just to say, what's the silence about? To ask, to use
Mhm.
inquiry
Yes.
to see if you can get people to speak up about, are they uncomfortable? Like what is going on for the individuals in the experience so that we can, create a space for somebody to speak if they
Yes.
are so inclined to do that and share what actually is going through their
Yeah,
minds.
a lot of alignment with your work in terms of, helping leaders understand their roles in
Mm.
all of this in terms
Yeah.
of the
Yes.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask one more question. um, what do you think is behind the silence? Like in your
I
experience?
think I think there it is such a political climate, or we're living in such a political climate that it's not that there is malintent with the silence. A lot of times people are wrestling with, choice of word, not wanting to be viewed in a counter perspective in terms of either not supporting or supporting, or just not feeling comfortable if they have questions. And to get beyond that, if we were to place our feet in someone else's shoes, my experience as a diverse leader, and I never give people a pass for saying that, well, people are going to be uncomfortable, because you could have uncomfortable experiences, walking through your neighborhood, going to a store, being followed by the police, and you're going the speed limit. It's like there's a range of experiences that people have, and how do we find that common denominator as human beings and seek to understand the perspective that others have. So I
Mhm.
think there's a lot that goes into the silence as an option, but you can't tell yourself the wrong story about it either.
Right.
Yes, that's
Hmm.
so true.
Yeah, we can make a lot of assumptions, right? So really, it is the dialogue, the conversation, the speaking your voice, using your voice, that will again really help to create understanding, shared understanding.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Another question, Ovell, is you focus on systemic approaches in the book and you describe them as the 3 Ps. So, what led you to coming up with the 3 Ps and the thinking behind them?
No, very interesting. Like throughout the book, I tried to come up with catchphrases, or descriptions that people would remember, taking this complex body of
Yeah.
work and making it as easy to remember with recommendations as possible. So as I took on additional responsibilities as a reminder for people that I was mostly an HR or human resource leader my entire career.
Mhm.
At the tail end, I was asked to assume oversight of the DE&I activity and became a chief diversity officer. So I had to learn the space. I was very vulnerable in asking questions, and with a goal of not wanting to offend anyone. And part of my learning, I learned from practitioners the importance of fixing systems as it relates to pro- producing better outcomes in the space of DE&I. And as you start thinking about systems, like what are systems that lead to disparate outcomes, you start thinking about policies, processes, procedures. And an easy way to remember those three categories are the three Ps. I was in a forum recently where one of the presenters also referenced, and as you look at the three Ps, you also have to look at the players or the people involved in those processes also, which was very interesting. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't enough to make me say the four Ps, but it was a good reminder that behind all of those systemics or systems are people. And so what happens in the DE&I space is if you take a systemic approach, your recommendations, it may take longer to see the results of your changes. And that's why I also talk in the book about systems versus charity. The work is not intended to be short term in nature. Most of us, as kind, caring human beings, the example I like to provide is if we all heard that there were children in need of gloves, most of us would raise our hand to assist in offering the short term solution. Here's a pair of gloves or some money to buy them. But if we started having deeper conversations about the why are these children in need of gloves? Is it access? Is it the cost? What are the reasons? You'll have fewer people weighing in to come up with solutions. And unfortunately, that's the direction we need to take is to fix the systems that lead to those outcomes. And that's where it takes the collective efforts of all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think one of the things I took away as well was that putting those systems, systematizing this, so to speak, providing the infrastructures, tools, those types of things really moves it beyond that popular thing to talk about, right? And moves it from that into action.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, the sentiment, it varies across the country within our community in terms of DE&I activity. I have a personal aspiration that as I, travel the country and deliver speeches, that I want all of us to be willing to advocate on behalf of someone else and be willing to do that in a proactive manner versus waiting and then this big event occurs and then we decide. I think that if we are able to do that, we can build better communities and we all benefit then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And actually inherent in that too is the polarity of individual and system. So like other things that Tracy and I have worked with organizations on that are transformational efforts, which is what this is
Mhm.
it's the system, and every individual has to be very well aware of it, look at their own beliefs, their own way of conversing, their own, and it's an and in both, right? So
Mhm.
you have to approach both
Yeah.
perspectives.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying the awareness may not mean that the person is required to change also. It could
Mm-hmm.
be that as they are aware of how they interact with people who have, different beliefs or
Mm-hmm.
perspectives, how that um, impacts them in weighing in on conversations. It could be that, you decide, you meet in the middle. Who knows what the probabilities are?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's that openness. And again,
Yes.
when you're creating a safe culture, then, and understanding, working from a shared purpose, working towards a greater purpose or from a shared purpose, then that can change the conversations as well, change the openness of the individuals to hear the various perspectives and start the conversation, the deeper conversation, not the surface stuff, really getting to the heart of things, because that's where the change will start to happen. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I agree. And,
Yeah.
allowing us to, find that common denominator, which is very
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah, it is very important.
Yeah.
So you have started something called Ask Ovell, and I'd like you to tell our listeners about it, kind of why you started it, what's behind it, and how you're using that to really kind of brand yourself in your effort.
Very interesting. I start to date myself and place myself solidly in a generation. I was always the kid scurrying toward the front door when the newspaper arrived, and I would tear through the newspaper and I would always read the advice columns.
Ah,
So it's interesting that I secured Ask Ovell as a URL, I think back in 2004 or 2005. I planned on at some point giving people advice because I had heavy influence from my grandparents, and people would always ask me, you know, perspective or opinions about situations. And I felt like what was missing was the male perspective because you had Ann Landers and Dear Abby. Very rarely did you have, a male perspective. But many years later, what I experienced working in HR is I would get calls from people and they would stutter through an intro to me saying, "Hey, I got your name from somebody and you work in HR and I'm wrestling with something at work. And I really want to talk to someone in HR, but I don't want to talk to someone at my company." So that's a whole nother podcast in terms of HR or not. But it's so interesting the questions that I had been asked. And I decided that for me, I feel like that's a role that I play in the village or in the greater community is giving people recommendations to help them navigate through, everyday situations because there is something about the security of your job and your employment where you want to make sure that you get some perspective when you unfortunately may be navigating some tough situations. So Ask Ovell is my platform to do that. I've been receiving questions and providing answers in like 2 to 3 minute video snippets where I talk about the question that was asked. And here is, my perspective. And I do have a trademark tagline. Are you guys ready for my tagline?
I
Yes,
am.
yes, we are ready.
To write it down.
When I complete the providing the answer, I end by saying, "And remember, you better ask somebody." That's the tagline.
That's
Ask Ovell.
great. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
I just have to say, you light up when you talk about this.
Mhm.
Your whole energy just shifted and you just like lit up, which just, I don't know, that just means to us you're following your purpose, your passion. And I think it's a great concept. And when it comes to HR things, there is a real sensitivity about, do I go to my HR, but where do I find an HR resource I can trust? Even if sometimes it might seem like a generic question,
Yeah, but if it's not,
Right.
if they don't feel safe,
Right.
then it just goes unanswered. So I think that's awesome. That's so great.
So I think there definitely is a need. I've been fielding lots of questions.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
That is really awesome. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we know you got the book out, and we've been following you on social media, and you've been speaking all over. Before we started the podcast interview today, you were just got home from 6 out of 7 different places speaking, and so just tell our listeners, what are some of the outcomes you want from speaking around the country related to your book and really your expertise.
No, it's a great question, one that I have really given a lot of thought to. I went to a speaker's boot camp and they really press you to answer the question, what's so special about you and what do you want as a desired outcome as you deliver speeches? And most of the participants, we all kind of, thought about it methodically with a lot of introspection. And I hit on part of my answer earlier when I was talking about the need for us to proactively advocate on behalf of others. And that is how I end, my speeches that I'm making is really a push, a call to action people to raise their hand in a proactive manner and be willing to advocate on behalf of someone. Someone said to me, they said, Ovell, that's great, but you need to provide examples. And, I really thought about like, what are examples that are kind of everyday, like, but may not be, as normal. Like if you're in the vicinity and you hear someone say, call 911, you're the first person without hesitation to start dialing. Or you're walking through a shopping center and you see the elderly person carrying bags, one of them falls, and you're the first person to decide to help. Or you decide, in my harried existence, I'm going to hold the door for someone who looks like they may not have an available means to do so. So those are examples of everyday experiences that we could be in where we make a choice. Am I going to help or not? Or am I going to just look away and like I don't notice the individual?
Right.
So that is what I want as an outcome. And I think that collectively, as a community, society, world, however you want to describe it, we will be better off in the long run. It doesn't mean tackle the mountain, but you can make a choice to help someone else.
Yep. One person at a time.
That's wonderful.
I love that. This has been so great. Just to get a little bit more under the covers, listening to the intention and a little bit more about your story, and really want to encourage our listeners to read your book. So we'll talk a little bit about where they can find that at the end. But before we go to that, we have some questions for you. Because in addition to the Ovell that has been very successful as a human resource strategist and now speaking across the country on DEI and some of these simple principles that can really make a difference, we want to know a few things about the true you. So I'm going to ask you one question. Tracy's going to ask you the second question, and then we'll wrap up our interview, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so the first question is, because we were really talking about this, what do we want to ask Ovell?
What do we want to know?
We have we just really want to know, what do you do for fun?
A lot of people ask me that. It's very interesting because my accountability partners in every organization, the number one category that I get horrible marks in is taking vacation. And so it's been a grind for me. And out of the 7 trips, truly one of the trips was a personal vacation. And it was a nightmare experience. Me going to Myrtle Beach around the Ophelia storm, highs in the 60s, pouring rain and high winds. I ended up coming back early. But I would say the things that I really enjoy, I always describe myself as a foodie. I'm notorious for asking people for restaurant recommendations. It doesn't have to be fine dining. People tell me, Ovell, you use restaurants to give directions. That is very true. So what I do for fun is I like the experience of getting a restaurant recommendation, pouring through the menu, making a decision, and then going, oh my God, that was awesome.
Wonderful.
That's great. That's great.
That's wonderful. I actually had that on my list of questions to ask you. I actually thought about that. I thought, I should ask him what he likes to eat.
I'm definitely a foodie, and which is the reason why I run.
Yeah, you got to wear that stuff off, right? Don't want to need. Oh, that's funny. All right. Well, I have a question for you. Now, this kind of stems a little bit from a personal experience myself. So my son was a huge U of M fan, like from the time he was a tot, right? Ended up going to The Ohio State University to get his PhD. And while he was there, it was a little bit difficult to be a U of M fan in enemy country, right? And he would sit in his apartment with the drapes closed and cheer on his team when they would play each other. And we noticed in your book that you went to both U of M and Michigan State. And so I just wondered what your experience was with, going to two competitive rivals, being a student of both.
Pass. Just kidding. Actually, it's a great question, one that I am asked because I went undergrad to U of M and master's number 1 at U of M, and then I enrolled at Michigan State at a later point. And I was so bold as to wear a Michigan baseball cap in class. People would literally throw things at you. And it's really interesting. I had an opportunity to go to a Michigan State football game recently, and I don't own anything green. I'm a diehard Wolverine. All the way. But I don't know if people will be able to see this picture at the game. I actually took a picture.
You and Sparty.
Sparty.
Yes.
Yeah, we see it. Yeah.
Someone said that they are going to forever bribe me with that particular photo, but a very interesting experience.
Yeah. It was for my son too. By the time he graduated, because he got his master's there, and then his PhD, and then he taught for a while. By the end, he would just sit in the stands with his U of M stuff on, and all of his close friends knew.
Yeah,
but
he's a brave man.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And I have a son that's a U of M big fan who married a Spartan graduate, and the same thing. It's just a fun family rivalry. So we that really popped out at us. Like, gosh.
49-0 kind of seals the, is it a rivalry? Or
Yeah.
not this year.
Not much of one, was it? Not at all. Not at all.
Oh, gosh.
No.
Oh, well, thank you. This has just been awesome, as we knew it would be.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Any closing remarks that you want to make for our listeners, Ovell?
I'm the guy who likes to think about it. I would say, as you think about, my message of choosing a cause, a reason to advocate on behalf of someone else, it doesn't mean that you have to boil the ocean or climb a mountain. You can make a decision to be kind to one individual.
Yes.
Or to be helpful to someone, because you don't know what the future holds for yourself or for the individual. And I guess I would close by saying that I'm a proponent of making sure that every decision you make, you are the author to the question, how are you going to be remembered? And that could be a whole nother podcast, but just as a reminder, be purposeful with the decisions that you make.
Yes.
Mindful choices.
Yeah, mindful choices.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
a great message.
And how can our listeners find you or find your book?
No, thank you for that. The book is available on all of the major retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, locally, online options, Schuler's, Bakers. We are lit. For those who are interested in bulk orders, 10 or more, if you order from my website, then you will get an automatic discount for bulk orders. And if you know me and you want an individual autograph, if you order from my website, then I autograph all of the individual orders that come through askovell.com, just as a thank you for your support of my efforts.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful.
That's really great.
Oh, that's so great. Well, it was just fabulous to have you
Yes.
on the show today, and lovely to connect with you again. And I'm sure
You guys
there's
are doing great work, and congratulations on your book as well. Excited to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's it for the show today. Another wonderful episode of the True Leader podcast. And we hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, share it with others. Spread the word. Do something kind for another leader.
Use your voice.
Yeah, use your voice. That's right. And you can also make sure that you don't miss any kind of any of our episodes, just subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to see us on video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. So we appreciate you being here. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and be kind to others.
Yes.
And use your voice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.